All right, this is a joint meeting of Executive Committee and Land Use and Planning. And the way these generally work is that the meeting, of course, is held jointly, but one of the chairs is generally selected to chair the meeting for both committees. My recommendation is that because the county board chair is on the executive committee and he's the highest ranking supervisor, he should probably chair the general meeting. However, when it comes time to vote on individual resolutions, there's a resolution here for land use and planning to consider, and there's a resolution here for executive committee to consider. When we get to that part, then the chair of land use and planning should take over and chair that vote. And the county board chair, as chair of executive, will then chair the vote for executive committee's resolution. And then I know. And then when we're done with that, the county board chair as presiding chair will then be able to take over again anything procedural and adjourn the meeting as we get to that point. Okay.
Yeah, everybody clear? Okay. Roll call. Everyone is here. Dennis Kelling is excused. Everybody else here? Okay, so we have a quorum of both committees. We begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, under action items, the first is the resolution place conservation easement on the Washington County Golf Course. That's a land and committee vote. I will defer to Chairperson Carol Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So hold on.
This is a resolution to place conservation easement on the Washington County Golf Course properties. And before we get into the discussion, I need a motion and a second from the Land Use Committee members only to proceed with the discussion on this. Was there a motion? Supervisor Krebs, is there a second? Everybody's behind me. I can't see you. All right, Supervisor Schulteis. With that, we'll move forward with the discussion. Executive Shulman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before you today are really two items that are really connected with one another. The easement itself and ultimately an endowment that will go with it. They'll work, they'll be approved separately as separate resolutions, but as you're thinking about one, you should be thinking about the other one. With regard to the easement specifically, what we're looking at is the totality of what has historically been called the Washington County Golf Course, approximately 288 acres, if my memory serves right. And specifically, this would be an easement through the Ozaki Washington Land Trust, which puts the property into conservancy permanently. So it's a tool that we use through land use, or excuse me, through like the deed process, if you will, to perpetually keep this property of the shape and variety it is today. There's a couple of caveats that we are working through as we speak with both the land trust and the donor family. So as I get into that, let me just deviate over to the other agenda item, because as I said, these two are very connected to one another. So the donor families and the business community at large have donated the property originally back about almost 25 years ago for the property that we have. They've come back now 25 years later with the interest in keeping this property largely as is, or at least for public use perpetually. To do that, the easement is the tool for the property itself, but also they've stepped forward and offered a matching type arrangement for an endowment, not just for this property, but that could also assist and support the Washington County Parks and Trails system perpetually, ongoing. How this easement relates to that is that the conversation from the very beginning has been the 3-acre parcel on the north end of the property that has historically been called Family Park. If you remember, 2 years ago, we about sold that parcel. The families came forward and offered a version of what you're about to hear about today. It ultimately led to this endowment idea. The endowment would be anywhere between $2 million and $2.5 million to start. It has the ability to grow really into perpetuity, certainly the ability for additional donations, whether they're from the county or whether they're from the private sector or individual families over time. And in exchange for that, if you will, this easement goes in place. Now, there's some exceptions to the easement. Obviously, there's existing buildings, there's existing parking lots in place. And so where we're at right now with that is that there is currently approximately 10 acres that has some sort of development on it, whether it's pavement or buildings or things of that variety. Where we're at today is that we would be able to basically double that number to 20 acres within reason, and we need to work out what those reasons are, but within reason, public purpose types uses, really parks types uses, and then another additional 15 acres in collaboration, in conversation, if you will, with the families, with Ozaki Washington Land Trust, making sure that we're living within the spirit of of the easement of park type uses. So in total, that would give us as much as 35 acres that could be developed for park type uses for the county. Okay. In addition to that, there would be 2 parcels, the northeast corner. So now you're talking close, immediately east and adjacent to Family Park where the pond is, if you're familiar with that. There's about 11 acres there that would be in a permanent conservancy state. Obviously, there's a pond there and marsh grass and things of that nature. So it makes all the sense in the world. The south and western corner of the property, about 68 acres, it's very much the same marshland, tamaracks. That also would be permanent conservancy. So neither of those 2 areas, 79 acres combined, would be developed for obvious reasons. The rest of the property is where this 20 plus 15, 35 total comes into conversation. On the endowment side, the goal is to be able to announce publicly sometime in 2022 that we have reached the $2.5 million endowment mark for 25 years, 2.5 million for 25 years. And ultimately, and if you have specific questions about how this will work over time, ultimately our goal is to allow those dollars to sit in place. Now, this is the county, but allow those dollars to sit in place, and somewhere in the future, close to 2026 or 2027 is kind of what we're thinking at the moment. We would then start drawing on the interest from that endowment. So let the endowment get establish itself, and then to begin to draw as will be laid out in the endowment agreement. So we'll be able to keep the principal in place for perpetuity. We'll be able to draw somewhere between, I'm going to use round numbers. These numbers move a little bit, but round numbers, 125 to 150,000 a year, which those dollars will be controlled by the county and the donor family. And basically it's a consensus every year. The Parks Department puts forward, here are the projects we have, assuming like years past, it's been parks like projects, we'll be able to draw those dollars from that endowment. At the end of the day, I want you to think about this in the most futuristic lens that you can possibly put on, 30, 50, 75 years from now, for 2 reasons. One, as we're thinking about that 20 plus 15, we're trying to be as flexible as possible. OWLT and the families are trying to be as flexible as possible with what that might look like. Because obviously 75 years from now, we don't know what park uses are going to be in vogue. On the other hand, we want to make sure that it doesn't turn into Noah's Ark water park either. So we're trying to balance some sort of semblance of conservation of what was intended at the same time as flexibility for the county to be able to do what it wants. Secondly, on the dollars and cents side, if you think about this 30, 50, 75 years from now, do the math from 2030, just as an even point, 50 years out to 2080, if we're collecting $130,000 and it stays stagnant, how much that calculates out to over 50 years. It's a significant sum. If you think about that in the context of the original 3 acres, which I think the Land Use and Planning Committee had authorized to put on the market, was it somewhere in the $200,000 range, a little more, $200,000. That's a big number. We get that return on investment in the first 2 years that we start drawing interest. If you think about the total value of the golf course today, and we talked about this with Land Use and Planning as well, an area golf course that sold not exactly the same, but sold for approximately 1.99 million. Okay, so that's a little longer, but still, if you're looking 30 or 50 years out, we'll not only get that 1.99 million, you'll make that and then some and then some and then some, on and on and on. So this is an extremely long-term project that we're asking you to look out 50 or 100 years. Normally, we're asking you to look out 5. But I think this is the quintessential public-private partnership between generous members of the community, OWLT, and county government. And I will say, I don't think any of us have ever worked on this type of project before. I know OWLT is in a little bit of new space working with a park. We're in new space with kind of putting some restrictions on what types of uses are we going to basically not allow ourselves to do. So there's a lot of room for trying to nail this down and get it right. But I would say as of today, and we have representatives from both OWLT and the business group, the family group with us today, I would say we're probably close to 98% of the way there, which means there's 2% chance we could still screw this up, by the way. But we're very, very close. And with what's in front of you today, I think that gives us enough of a green light to hopefully dot some I's and cross some T's before we get in front of county board. So with that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions if I missed anything. Oh, one last thought, if I might, Mr. Chairman. The timing of this is extremely important. So as you can imagine, donations are critical for us to get the endowment done. And today is October 20th, which means we've got 2 months and 11 days until the end of the year, which from donation purposes is a clock that's ticking for us. So we want to make sure to get this approved through this committee and then ultimately approved through the county board by November so that those donations can happen before the calendar turns over to 2021. So we want to keep the ball moving and we do have a sense of urgency to get that complete.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bossert, I see you have your microphone. I'm going to defer at this point in time to land use committee members only for questions right now. Anybody, and I've got some comments to make, but I'll go to the other committee members. Anybody else with questions on the land use group? Okay, that was quick. I have a couple questions for you. What would be the disposition of the funds that we're currently realizing from the golf course? That has been a profitable venture for the county. Where would those funds, would those continue to come back into the county coffers or would they be diverted somewhere else?
So everything related to golf course operation as is today would stay as is today. That is to say, if you approve the budget that executive committee will contemplate tonight, it's basically a status quo. Is it 125,000 goes to the parks system? 120,000 goes to the park system. Everything else is kept within the golf course enterprise fund. That is not to say that couldn't be changed where you could donate into this endowment, but that would be a decision of the board at some time in the future. But as of the approval of this resolution, the 2022-2023 budget would keep the status quo with regard to the golf course budget.
Okay, thank you. And another question. We're looking at 1,250,000 from the private sector. I've heard some list language, some discussion around the building here today. It looks like that is something that has gotten some momentum to it. Can you reflect on how you feel that that's going to happen, or is it going to happen?
I'm confident it's going to happen. The families have made me confident that that's going to happen, but the timing is everything. So Jamie was kind enough to slip me that note and say, we got to get this done by the end of the year. Please tell them that. That was why, because everything that I described earlier is the case. I feel comfortable we're going to get closer to that 1.25, but at the end, I want to make an important point, and I'm assuming this is what Supervisor Bossert was going to ask, and if you don't mind, I'll just jump the gun now. I'm not overly concerned whether the families end up giving 750,000 or 1.25 million. Now, I certainly hope it's 1.25 million, but at the end, it doesn't bother me too much. And the reason is twofold. One, once we establish the fund, it's just a matter of when do we want to start drawing on it? Because once you have $2 million in the bank, it will accrue its own interest that will build the fund in and of itself, as long as you don't draw from it. Secondly, I think once it's established, whether we have 2 million or 2.5 million on the front end, I think we're going to get more individuals who are willing to contribute smaller dollar amounts, large dollar amounts to that fund. And I fully anticipate, maybe not this board, but future boards are also going to turn around and say, we have some surplus money, we're going to direct it to this endowment fund. I fully anticipate at some point, Jamie's Parks Fiscal Sustainability Plan turns into a Parks Thriving Plan, which ultimately has some excess revenue, which you're going to turn around and want to put into this fund. So I think no matter what happens, once you've established the concept, people are going to want to contribute more and more, including future county boards. And then the dollar amount's just going to grow and grow and grow, both the principal as well as the interest earnings over time.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Bossett, you still have a question? Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Krebs, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh, could you also just go over kind of what the intentions would be of the disbursements from the endowment fund? Earlier conversations, it was not specific only to this property, but also the Parks Department at large. Is that still the case or intention with that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. It's a good question. Yet you're correct. This would be open to the entirety of the Washington County Parks, Trails, and Golf Course. There's an important caveat that I've requested that has been built in so far, and that is this is tied in part to the easement, but we're not trying to completely marry them together. Nonetheless, part of my philosophy with this is I think everybody, generally speaking, the majority, generally speaking, wants to keep this a golf course as long as we possibly can. And so while the dollars can be used for anything, if 15 or 20 years from now, golf starts to decline as an industry, these dollars can be used to supplement the golf course if it gets into the red on an annual basis for a period of time. Now, at some point, I think that group that I talked about before, the families and the county collectively are going to say, okay, we need to cut our losses and move into some other area for the Parks Department. But it at least allows for the golf course to go as long as it possibly can go. In addition to that, I think it's important to know that there's nothing that requires us to use that interest on an annual basis, those allocations. So if you want to put it back into the fund and just let the fund grow, you can do that, whether it's all or part of it. And you can use it for new property acquisitions, new capital improvements. One example that came up very early on, for example, is the sprinkler system throughout the course is coming towards end of life. That would be a very logical thing to hundreds of thousands of dollars, or at least tens of thousands of dollars that can be allocated towards it. So did I answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, just to expand a little more, we can, if the dollars aren't chosen or desired to be spent at that property, just making others aware that it could be used, at Sandy Knoll Park, or you name it, anywhere else for other park or park/recreational uses, is just trying to make sure everyone's aware of that.
That's correct.
But
Anywhere.
it's
in
at a
the-
yearly discretion of both parties involved.
Yes, anywhere within the Washington County Parks and Trails system, including the golf course.
I do similar to along the lines of Supervisor Krebs, but maybe a little different approach is, so yes, the funds are intended for the golf parks and trail endowment, and there will be some guidance along with that. My concern would be is, now to 25 or 75 years in the future, what is that strategic plan? Right? We have one today, and our staff has continued to work on that and continue to build that out. But just because we have extra funds doesn't mean we should spend more money. So is it intended for maintenance, or is it intended for, continual improvement? Because as you improve and build more, you have to have resources to pay for more and maintenance for more. So is there thought on how much is intended for growth of the park system or for general maintenance? So that's just a general thought in my head. And then I guess in another, you said these are linked. So if the conservation easement isn't approved, then it sounds like the donors probably wouldn't contribute to the endowment fund.
So I'll answer those in the order you asked them, because the last one's not that fun. But anyway, I completely agree that 75 years from now, we should be concerned that somebody somewhere is going to spend too much money on government. And if history is any indicator, yep, that's going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. But that's not to say that there aren't some, I don't know if restrictions is the right word, but there's some parameters around how the dollars are spent. It's not operating, except for the case of the golf course, which is kind of why I went on about that. It's about capital expenditures, maintenance only insofar as an example like the irrigation system, not maintenance like going, day-to-day maintenance going to mow the grass. I think that's a agreed upon expectation by all the parties. The latter part, that's where they are connected. Yes, the reason, what prompted this was the family park situation, and that led to ultimately this conversation of not only the easement. I mean, the very first conversation was about an easement over the 3 acres, or the concept of an easement over the 3 acres. This is expanded into the whole course and a $2.5 million endowment. So it went from a $200,000 discussion to a $2.5 million discussion, basically in one meeting. So yes, they are tied together in that way. Other than that, they are not tied together. And what I mean by that is exactly what Supervisor Krebs was trying to get at. This isn't to say all this money has to go to the golf course forever and ever. It can help the parks and trail system, which is why I'm so confident in the earlier commentary about, even if we only get to 2 million to start, this thing's going to grow because people want to give to causes of this variety, whether it's through their trusts or just on an annual basis. And I think future county boards will want to as well. The last thing that I will say, and this, your question made me think of this, what you're essentially doing by adopting the latter resolution concerning the endowment is you're locking up county money, first of all, and then money donated to the county, second of all. The money that is county money that you're locking up, there will be a provision in there that any county board in the future can withdraw principal from that account of up to 20%. Okay, and that percentage may change as we sit down with Greater Milwaukee Foundation, but the county board could pull principal out of there, but the future county board must replace that principal within 5 years. So we're putting restrictions on future county boards, but through the vehicle of an investment. So On the other side, the family's donation, that principal can never be touched. That will forever into perpetuity remain, that principal will remain. Where the county benefits is all of the interest earnings over time. That's where you really begin to see growth. And so I know, again, that was a really long-winded answer, but I hope it answers your question full circle.
It does. And, you know, again, not sure what's going to be 75 years from now, but so if the county decides, nope, we're done with it. We don't want to use the endowment anymore because we just don't. What happens to the funds then?
That's a wonderful question. I really, really doubt government would ever do such a thing, but yeah, it's a good.
Right,
it's a
but
wonderful
also,
question.
I mean, speaking of endowments, right? We have universities across this nations with billions or trillions of dollars in there, and they're continuing to grow. I mean, at some point in time, presumably we wouldn't want to contribute any more of fund balance into that. And I get the seeding part. So the 500,000 or the half of this is the seeding.
Yep.
And then further on, presumably we're going to say, look, no more, or we're going to control how we grow our park system so that we're sustainable with fees and all of that.
I actually see 50 years from now, I see the potential that if people are smart enough for long enough, this endowment is built to such a point where it completely funds major portions of the park system. I really think it's got that kind of potential. I hope that future administrations and future county boards require maintenance plans and capital improvement plans and equipment replacement plans, but I mean, you never know what you're going to get. So I think I see more upside, and I guess I've just never thought I would see a day when a county government walked away from free money.
Thank you, sir. We have some
Interest
guests in our
rates.
gallery today. Does anyone from the group over here sitting have any comments or questions you'd like to direct to the group here tonight?
Anybody has any questions, we're happy to answer them. I think Josh has pretty much covered it.
All right, very good. Thank you. Quite frankly, I think this is a win-win for everybody. And I congratulate Supervisor Krebs when he was approached by this many months ago now. His first thought was to let's bring this up and let's have some discussion about it. We've got the family together with the leadership at the board. And I think it's a rare opportunity that we've got this size of a property that's currently being used as the families originally intended. And the fact that this could give us an opportunity to grow that usage really into perpetuity. It can't be developed in other land. It can always be there. It's a sizable property. I'm sure the city of Hartford is very glad that it's going to have it there because people coming to this property to use it will likely spend some money somewhere else in the Hartford area when they're there. But in all told, the entire concept, I think, as I said, it's a win-win for everybody. And I would encourage those members of the Land Use and Planning Committee to vote in favor of this. And if there's no other discussion, any other comments from anyone?
Supervisor Boss.
Mr. Slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Yes, sir.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mahalan.
Thank you. I just wanted to know on this vote for passing this forward, this is just, even though this is a joint meeting, this is just land use and planning that's voting on this, correct?
On the first resolution, yes.
Okay, so in other words, what's going on in this meeting is going to be basically carried over into executive. Correct?
As I tried to articulate at the beginning, they're interconnected. Although they're separate, they're interconnected to one another. That's why we felt having the joint meeting was necessary, because executive has the authority over the general fund transfer. Land use has the authority over the easement. But you can't have one discussion without the other. So
Mhm.
does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yes. Please, first I want to go on record that I'm a big believer in golf as a recreational activity. Of course, what I do isn't really called golf. It's really chasing a ball, and I can't get three people to go with me. So, and I don't blame them. But I do enjoy it. And I have sons that golf. I even have a couple of grandsons now that are at 6 and 5 years old, are putting it around. So please understand that I'm very interested in maintaining something of that quality. That being said, I believe that there is an arrogance in us believing that we can control something of this nature for as long as we're looking. Perpetuity is a very long time. And in fact, I even talked to Con Executive Showman about this, I believe a couple of months ago already, as far what I would propose, and if I can't get it here, because I am not a member of the Land Use and Planning Committee, I want to float the idea, and I would certainly be looking at it ahead of or moving forward. And I don't know if in exact words this was put ahead with the group that's represented here and with the families, is that when you look at generations, you've got Gen X, you've got Gen Y, the millennials, now you get Gen Z, and you're only looking at about 20 years apart when they separate these. So I doubled that, and I'm looking at 40 years. In 40 years, looking at the crowd, most of you will be dead. Okay, well, good for you. Good for you. I'm guessing that I will not live to 103. Okay, so given that, when I look at what we're doing, what I'm considering is taking 40 years and going along with everything that you've said. But on that 41st year, when none of us, except maybe Brian Krebs, will be on the county board anymore, and we're looking at literally 2 generations later, my oldest grandchild will be just about to turn 47, which is, he'll have kids and maybe approaching grandkids by then. That we look at with a super or more than a majority vote, with a 2/3 extraordinary vote, that this county board would be able to look at alternatives for that property if there needs to be. Now, in looking at it from my position, I'd vote to keep it a golf course. That's what I would do. But who am I to say what's going to happen 40 years from now? 25 years from now, when this thing was donated, I'm holding up a smartphone, didn't exist. Think of how our lives had changed just with this goofy little thing. Well, 40 years from now, we're going to be the Jetsons, for crying out loud. So why are we tying our hands thinking we're doing such a good deed? It is such arrogance for us to think that we know what our kids, our grandkids, and by then even some of our great grandkids are going to want and or need. And if the families who have this money are so worried about it, all they have to do is make sure that when there are elections, which there are every 2 years, that they back people. So at least a third of them support what they want, because you need a 2/3 vote 41 years from now to change it. And that's what I'm looking for. And that's really the way I'm going to support. Otherwise, to me, that type of arrogance, I don't think is befitting this body, of saying, well, we know better than anybody else, and we know what the future is going to be, and we know what's best for our progeny. You know what? I don't think we do. And I want to give them the freedom, and with a very strict parameters. I mean, a 2/3 vote is not easy to muster here, to make sure that we have something that allows there to be at least a modicum, there's my college word for the day, a modicum of flexibility should the need arise when we are all either well retired, long or worm food. I think it really does make a lot of sense. I think it's irresponsible, my personal opinion, to move ahead in any other way. So that's what I would ask my esteemed colleagues on land use and planning to consider, and not worry too much about patting everybody else patting themselves on the back, but realizing that things do change, and we have to be able to leave some lever in there way in the future to make sure that that change can be, without legal ridiculousness, can be addressed. Thank you.
Mr. Bossert. Yes, Mr. Bossert, please.
I just want to clarify. I think I have a little bit different understanding than Supervisor Mahalik does of what's being proposed. My understanding is that we're not obligated to keep this a golf course. We're obligated to keep this as some sort of public green space use. Is that
Correct.
the correct understanding?
That's correct.
Okay, so 40 years from now, we don't have to keep it as a golf course. We can make it a nice big county park if golfing is no longer something that's of interest to enough people to make it worthwhile for us to stay in that business.
As long as Churchill Downs is 35 acres or less, you should be fine. Churchill Downs is a horse racing facility, for those of you who don't know.
So, but that's one of the reasons why I support this. You know, right now, if, as things stand before we vote on this, 30 years from now or 40 years from now, people aren't golfing anymore. We don't have a set exit strategy. We could sell it to a developer, we could do other things. This plan sets that exit strategy already in a way that the families like and that provides for a public use. And so I like that. You know, if golfing's not in vogue anymore, we make it some sort of other county park. It's a beautiful facility and we can do that. So I'm in support of this. I'm going to thank the families who are here for this generous donation. I think this is a great way to approach this. The private sector and the public sector coming together to resolve this problem and step forward a positive future for this facility. You know, I know Family Park doesn't fit within our current park priority scheme. When I've been out at Family Park a couple times this summer to basically see this park firsthand, I've seen a lot of people walking dogs there. So I'm going to suggest that maybe one of the ways that we make Family Park a better part of our parks system is that we make that a dedicated dog park. I don't think there's any dog parks in that area of the county. So I think that might serve a very good purpose. The golf course is a great facility. I had some concerns about why 1.25 million was suddenly 750,000 to 1.25 million. I think our county executive spoke to that and spoke very well. I feel much more comfortable with that. And as far as I'm concerned, this is all good. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You wish to make some comments? Please use the microphone and identify yourself. Thank you.
Color Rolfs and, okay, that's good. First of all, this was offered for perpetuity. And it will be 1.25 million. That's pretty much a given at this point. But what I'd like to say to you, Mr. Mahalik, is think of Central Park, because when they did that, they guaranteed that one for the long-term future. And nobody regrets Central Park, and that's some of the most valuable real estate in the world. And I think we're providing you with the flexibility that it does not have to be a golf course. So I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Supervisor Schleif, you had a comment, question?
Thank you, Supervisor Mary. I too like the public-private partnership bit. We talked the last term a lot about the golf course, and ultimately we voted pretty overwhelmingly to keep the golf course. And I think the point is we want to have the golf course or parks and green spaces. So this allows us to do that. It's a win-win, and I strongly support it. As we said last term, we don't know what future county boards are going to do. So by setting this easement in place, we kind of like set the framework and protect it. Exactly. So thank you.
Mr. Krebs.
Thank you. Yeah, I would echo some of the other comments. I don't think this is pompous or anything about knowing what the future holds. I think this was visionary with foresight to actually guarantee that we'll have something there. Obviously, whether it's golf or something else, either way, we know we'll have some type of enjoyment that everyone can enjoy. I want to thank the families for approaching the county about this and making this offer. It really does truly show the belief in the investment that they wanted to make in Washington County. Furthermore, early in the conversations, I really focused on what was the original intention of the golf course. There was not a lot that was put in writing or memorialized about it, but this is going back 25 years. Taking those intentions, then obviously putting our little flavor spin on it now, but this is putting it in stone where we can, moving forward, everyone's on the same page with what will happen with this property. Obviously, the discussions about whether it should be a golf course or not will come up again at some point in the future. But at least we'll know what the alternatives could be in the future then, or what the possibilities would be for it in the future. So I would encourage everyone to support it. Furthermore, I would also encourage the city of Hartford, as they grow and expand around this golf course, to also partner in with the county on this. There's going to be a lot of park fees that the city collects as they can continue to grow around this golf course. Some of those park fees that the city collects also should be could be invested into this parcel in some form or shape for both the city residents, but also all the county residents to enjoy in this area. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krebs. Mr. Gallots?
Yeah, just a parting thought, was this really solidifies the commitment of the county to self-sustaining parks. I mean, if it doesn't say that, I don't know what it says. And if that is what the previous boards have determined is appropriate for the county, this just sends that message in perpetuity, reality. To my question about what happens to funds, 50 years from now, well, they're going to be earmarked for parks, whatever a park looks like 50 years from now.
We have another comment from the audience, please. Take the microphone.
I'm Maurice Strupp. I'm the only member left that built that golf course at that time. We spent many, many hours, and I was responsible to get some of the land for it. And I'm glad to see that this is happening. And I congratulate all you guys.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to thank the families that made the original donation to the park, and having the foresight to come forward and to negotiate in good faith with the county to make sure that this remains something that your families can be proud of forever. And this is how government's supposed to work. It's supposed to work by and for the people. And I'm very pleased that this happened. And I got to commend you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to echo what Mr. Gallant said, if nothing else, this particular board will go down in history as one really promoting public parks in Washington County. So if there are no other comments or questions, we'll move to a vote with the Land Use and Planning Committee members only to approve a resolution placing a conservation easement on Washington County Golf Course. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The resolution is passed, sir. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Resolution transfer from the general fund, authorize the creation of golf parks and trails endowment fund. I'll entertain a motion. Supervisor Dice, Supervisor Bossert. Any further discussion on the matter? Executive committee only.
That's executive committee only.
The executive committee will be voting on this. Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the esteemed member here who mentioned that it's definitely going to be $1.25 million from the families. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think it's so wonderful that I'd like to make an amendment that we match them dollar for dollar. So if they do $700,000, so do we. If they do $1.25 million, so do we. That's what I'd like to see if the, we're in a position where I know County Executive Showman said, well, with interest, everything builds up. And I don't know what interest rates you get, but mine is like sub 1%. So I don't know how fast you're going to grow with that. So unless you're planning to go into a much more risky investment, I don't see there to be tremendous growth that's going to make this thing. But what I would like to do is match the generosity of these families. And again, please understand, I'm not looking or putting down anything. I enjoy the golf course. We were proud of with the city of Hartford when we annexed it into the city. We want to keep it a golf course. Not that we have anything to say about it because it's county land, but we encourage the county to be a golf course. I've always voted for it to be a golf course. I mean, I'm extraordinarily consistent in all of this. The only thing I had asked, obviously, was for a 40-year, if we want to take another look at it. Obviously, everybody is in a perpetuity mode, so there isn't a lot I can do there. But I am very interested to make sure that we do start out with $2.5 million. And seeing we have the confidence of this Washington Ozaukee County Land Use Board saying that it'll be $1.25 million, I would like to then make sure we match it dollar for dollar and then hold them to that commitment. So is that something that I can do as an amendment to this to make sure that we get that dollar amount and that takes any guessing off the table? Does it say it in there?
Yeah.
So then we don't have to worry about the 700,000. When Josh was talking about, well, if it's less than, it's not that big a deal. Well, to some of us it is. So you're saying that we're going to match them dollar for dollar. So if they're at less than 125, we're less than 125.
Your amendment would be germane. Really doesn't say that precisely. So if there is a second. Okay.
Certainly you can do that if you so choose. My point was not that it doesn't matter, but that I think over time it's going to take care of itself. And when I said that, what I mean is the way that we're going to handle the investment is we're going to put it into an endowment in the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, West Bend Community Foundation through the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. But their average rate of return, this is from them, and Margie can speak to this better than I can, and Claire can probably speak to this better than I can, but their average rate of return is approximately 4% over the last many years. So it's a decent rate of return. And of course, interest in the next several years probably is going to go up. But let's say it's 4%. That's where I calculate out the 2.5 eventually to 125,000. And where I use that range from. So it really becomes a mathematic equation. If we only had 2 million, all you have to do is figure out how long it's going to take you to get to whatever your desired withdrawal is. That was my only point. And if you want to match it dollar for dollar, you certainly can do that. I would leave it up to the discretion of the executive committee. The reason we left it that flexible was this was written 60 days ago, 90 days ago. We've literally gotten basically everybody on board, and we're still herding cats literally right up to 15 minutes before this meeting, trying to nail down all the details as best we can. As you know, we don't come to you with things half cocked. We try to come with them tied down. So that's why there was some flexibility built in, but whatever you choose to do, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think it works the way it is. I think it works if you amend it. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Line 46 reads, but not less than 750,000, which would total 2 million. So that would be the amendment. I think.
So the amendment would be
strike that language.
the generosity of the group is phenomenal. I think it's wonderful. They're expressing right now the confidence that they have it. I'm just saying, if we've got that confidence, then let's get that money and move forward.
The The other lens that I'll just bring though is if we do that, and that's fine, all you're saying is we're gonna create a lesser endowment. So if the families for some reason only create 750,000 and we match 750,000, our endowment is only 1.5 million instead of our endowment being 2 million.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, you know, the interesting thing when we're looking at this fund, you know, whenever have, you know, an undesignated fund balance, you know, I nicknamed the one in the city of Hartford, it's the we taxed you too much, but we're not giving it back to you balance.
Mhm.
Okay. These are levy dollars. That's what they are. They're dollars that were overtaxed and we didn't give it back. Okay. And now we're spending it like it's this pile of money that, you know, the taxpayers don't have to worry about. I value those dollars as if they are levy dollars because they are levy dollars. So that's why I'm saying if we're going to spend levy dollars, and I will vote for this, but I would like to see that commitment from these folks who want to, who are very generous in their donation to put this land in perpetuity. I do not eschew any of their generosity as regards to the initial land 25 years ago and what we're looking at now. But then let's have it $2.5 million. And we are taking tax levy dollars that happen to be in an account as an undesignated fund balance and putting it up against the generous donation of these families. They can put as much money as they want. My thing was we would limit it, that the limit would be $1.25 million on our side. If they want to give $3 million and they got it, hey, rock and roll. We will match dollar for dollar up to $1.25 million. That's what I'm asking.
I'm going to say a little something before you go. When we use levy dollars for parks and perpetuity, one of the things that does is it contributes to the quality of life of the citizens of Washington County.
I understand.
So we are, and I preach on this all the time. We are the #1 county for quality of life in the state of Wisconsin. And it's due to citizens like sitting here that are working with our government to do things. So yeah, it is levy dollars and it's taxpayers' money. But anytime the government does something, it's supposed to be for the benefit of those that we represent, correct? So this is to enhance the lives of all of our citizens. And it, you know, I mean, I got a call from business in Hartford who is way in favor of this, a very large business that said, we need to do this. We support this. This brings people to our business
Yeah,
to
you're talking
work.
about Pat from Quad Graphics. I got the same call.
Yeah.
In fact, I was talking to him literally just before this meeting while sitting in this chair.
Yep.
And I
So,
agree with him.
yep. So it's a differentiation that we make, that when we do spend taxpayer dollars, we do it responsibly. We do it for the benefit of citizens. And I think this falls within that parameter. So sorry.
We don't disagree.
County Executive Showman.
Thank you. The only thing that I'll say, because I don't think the horse needs to be beat anymore now that it's dead, is your very next meeting, you're voting on a budget that cuts the levy by $500,000 in both years and creates a property tax relief fund to do exactly what you're describing.
Yep. So, okay. Going back to, we have an amendment. Do we have a second? Okay, motion dies due to lack of a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll vote on this. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. 6 o'clock. Be back at 6 o'clock. For more thrills.
Yes.
Maury, thanks for coming.
Well, so far, so good. We're still playing back a lot. Yeah. But I did see my comment, I'm not planning on buying, so. I agree with you. I'm not gonna worry about that. No. You're good. So we'll go. I'm going. I did get that email. Nice. So right now, so that you have.
Oh, yeah. I know. So, I'm just the mayor.
Thank you again. I am, somehow my husband is. There's so many of those. Yes. And I think that that's. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So it is, yeah. Right, but the one I know is when I called him septic tank. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's around here.
Yeah. Last time they had double orange on the game.
Yeah.
I called up 15. Super late. Now Birdie was here.
No, Bernie was there. My uncle was also. He wanted to. Yeah. My dad was.
I'm here. I'm not sure. Chairman of the board.
That's where we got this guy. I like it. I like it. It was that simple. Like, so that's where we keep saying the same things, but it's always like, well, we have like 6 or 8 years past. Like, yeah, that's the end. Right. That's the and we like, so we get that. And so, and then but you're not gonna try to get like in the notes because like you would just type how much your stuff is people that you rely on. You rely on numbers, right? Like some big stat that XYZ, so XYZ, like so no, I didn't realize you were so volunteer. Like that's No, I didn't know that. But still, we have to have the conversation. Okay, this is like, in addition to that is sort of the approved, right? You know, what are the things that